Cat disappeared without a trace. What his owner learns next will break your heart. Cat's letter. My dearest Eleanor, have you ever wondered where we cats go when we disappear without a trace? All those times you called my name in the garden, put up posters around the neighborhood and waited by the door with that old can of tuna. I saw everything even though you couldn't see me. If you're reading this now, it means our time together in this world has ended. But there are things my little cat heart needs you to know before your memories of me fade like paw prints in the snow. I need you to understand that leaving wasn't a choice I made lightly, but rather the final act of love from a friend who couldn't bear to cause you more pain. I still remember that rainy April afternoon in Millbrook when our paths crossed. You were carrying groceries from your station wagon, struggling with those paper bags that were getting soaked. One tore open, and those little green apples rolled across your driveway. You were so upset on your knees gathering them up when you spotted me, skinny, wet, scared, hiding under the azalea bushes. Most people would have shooed me away or simply ignored me. But not you, Eleanor. You stopped everything, set down your remaining bag, and spoke to me in that gentle voice I would come to know as home. Hey there, little one. Are you lost? You asked, as if I might answer. I was terrified, but something in your eyes told me I could trust you. You didn't rush, didn't force anything, just went inside and came back with a small plate of something that smelled like heaven to my hungry belly. You sat on the porch steps in the rain, not minding that your nice blue sweater was getting damp, and waited patiently as I inched closer. I remember the way you smiled when I finally took that first bite, how you whispered, "That's it, you're safe now." And for the first time in months, I believed I might be. I should tell you where I came from, though I've never shared this before. I wasn't always a stray. I had another home once with a family in a neighborhood not far from yours. There was a man who yelled a lot, a woman who seemed always tired, and two small children who didn't know how to be gentle. When they moved away, they simply left me behind, as if I were nothing more than a lamp or a broken chair, something not worth taking to their new life. For weeks I waited on that empty porch, confused and hungry, until finally I understood they weren't coming back. I wandered for months after that, learning the harsh lessons of survival, which yards had dogs, which humans left food out, how to avoid the busy streets where cars never slowed down. By the time I found your driveway, I wasn't sure I could trust humans again. But there was something about you, Eleanor, something different. Maybe it was the gentleness in your voice or the patience in your eyes, or maybe, as you often said, we were just meant to find each other. That night you made a bed for me in your laundry room with an old towel and a shoebox. Just until we find your family, you told me. But I think we both knew even then that I had already found my family in you. I was afraid to believe it at first. After all, humans had let me down before. I stayed hidden in that makeshift bed, emerging only when you were in another room, cautiously exploring this new territory, testing whether it was truly safe. Your house felt enormous to me then, a labyrinth of rooms with so many interesting smells and sounds. I discovered that the bathroom rug was particularly soft for napping, that the living room had excellent patches of sunlight in the afternoons, and that your bedroom slippers left by your bed each night carried your comforting scent. I learned that the kitchen was where wonderful smells originated, and that the strange loud box in the laundry room sometimes vibrated in a way that was oddly soothing to sleep on. The first few days, I stayed hidden most of the time. I wasn't used to kindness. The house was quiet except for the ticking of that grandfather clock in the hallway and the occasional ring of your telephone. I learned your routines, how you'd wake early and make coffee, the way you hummed old songs while folding laundry, how you talked to the plants in the sunroom as if they were old friends. Sometimes I heard you talking to someone named Harold on the phone, your voice changing slightly, becoming both softer and somehow sadder. You seemed to live alone, yet the house was filled with evidence of a fuller life. Photographs everywhere, 2 chairs at the kitchen table though you only used one, a closet in the spare room filled with men's clothing that carried a faint, unfamiliar scent. I noticed how sometimes you'd pause in front of those pictures, touching them gently with your fingertips, how your eyes would grow distant, as if seeing something far beyond the walls of the house. By the end of the first week, I started following you from room to room. You seemed delighted by this, talking to me constantly as if I were another person. Tucker, you called me, because of how I would tuck myself into any small space when I was nervous. The name felt right from the beginning, like a comfortable collar. You began each morning saying, "Good morning, Tucker. What adventures shall we have today?" As if we were explorers setting off on a grand expedition, rather than two souls simply trying to make it through another day together. Do you remember how cautiously we approached each other at first? How you'd put food down and then step away, giving me space? How you'd sit on the floor reading a book and pretending not to notice me, allowing me to decide when I was ready for closer contact? I appreciated that respect more than you knew. It built the foundation of trust between us, something I thought I'd never feel again. Remember how shocked you were the first time I jumped onto your lap while you were reading in that big armchair by the window? You gasped, then froze completely, afraid to move and scare me away. I circled 3 times and settled down, and you whispered, "Well, I guess we're friends now, aren't we, Tucker?" I felt your tears fall onto my fur, but they weren't sad tears. Later, I understood that I had arrived during a time when you needed someone too. That Harold person whose name you sometimes said to empty rooms. He had been gone for 2 years by then, and your daughter Marianne lived across the country with her new family. You were alone just as I was. Perhaps that's why we recognized something in each other right from the start. When you took me to that place with the strange smells and the woman in the white coat, I was terrified. But you held me and spoke soothingly the whole time. "Just making sure you're healthy, Tucker," you explained as the woman examined me. "We need you around for a long time." When she told you I was about 3 years old and, despite my time on the streets, relatively healthy, you smiled as if you'd received wonderful news. On the drive home, you stopped at a store and came out with bags full of things just for me: a real bed, toys, a scratching post, special food. You spent that evening showing me each item, watching with delight as I cautiously investigated these new treasures. "This is your home now," you said, scratching that perfect spot under my chin. "You're not a visitor anymore, you're family." Our days together became a comfortable dance of small rituals. Mornings began with you shuffling to the kitchen in those plaid slippers, fixing your coffee and my breakfast. I learned to recognize the sound of the can opener and would race to the kitchen from wherever I was napping. You'd laugh and say, "Hold your horses, Tucker. I'm moving as fast as these old bones allow." Then you'd sit at the kitchen table, reading your newspaper while I ate, occasionally reading headlines aloud as if I might have opinions on world events. "Can you believe this, Tucker?" you'd ask, shaking your head at some troubling news story. "The world's gone crazy." I couldn't disagree. After breakfast, you'd take your coffee to the sunroom where you tended to your plants. Such strange creatures, those plants. Never moving, never making noise. Yet you cared for them as attentively as you cared for me. You'd water them, clip dead leaves, turn them toward the light, all while keeping up a running commentary. "The African violet is looking peaky today, Tucker. Do you think it needs more light?" I'd watch from my spot on the wicker chair, squinting in the morning sunshine, content to observe this peculiar human ritual. Mid-mornings were often for housework, the vacuum cleaner that I feared at first, but later viewed as a noisy adversary to be stalked and swatted, the dusting of shelves that sent motes dancing in sunbeams, the changing of bed linens that became a game as I pounced on moving sheets. You'd feign annoyance, saying, "Tucker, you're not helping, but your laughter told me otherwise." You had a habit of talking to me about everything: the weather, your garden plans, neighborhood gossip, your worries about your daughter Marianne in Seattle who rarely called. I became the keeper of your secrets, listening as you shared memories of Harold, your husband who had passed 5 years before I came along. Sometimes you'd show me old photographs, pointing to a tall man with kind eyes and saying, "That's him, Tucker." You would have liked him, and he would have pretended not to like you, but I'd have caught him sneaking you treats. From these one-sided conversations, I pieced together your story. How you'd met Harold when you were just 19, how you'd moved to Millbrook after he retired from teaching at the high school in Portland, how his heart had given out suddenly one ordinary Tuesday while he was working in the garden. In the afternoons, if the weather was nice, you'd open the back door and let me explore the garden while you pulled weeds or read in the patio chair. I loved those hours of supervised freedom, investigating the flower beds, stalking butterflies, climbing the old maple tree while pretending not to hear you calling, "Not so high, Tucker. You'll get stuck." Sometimes I did get stuck and you'd bring the stepladder, climbing up despite your fear of heights, talking to me calmly until you could reach me and carry me down. "You silly thing," you'd scold, but you'd hold me close all the way back to the house. Remember that spot on the windowsill in the living room? The one that caught the afternoon sun perfectly, that became my kingdom. I'd stretch out there for hours, watching birds at the feeder you installed just for my entertainment, as you put it. Sometimes you'd sit nearby in your rocking chair, knitting or reading, and we'd share that peaceful silence that only true friends can enjoy. On rainy days, you'd make tea and we'd watch the droplets race down the window panes. "Look at that one, Tucker," you'd say, pointing to a particularly fast raindrop. "He's winning." I never understood the game, but I loved the sound of happiness in your voice. Evenings were my favorite. You'd cook dinner, sometimes dropping a small piece of chicken or fish onto the floor accidentally for me to find. After washing dishes, another strange human ritual, why clean perfectly good food smells off plates, you'd settle in your chair with a book or your knitting while the television murmured in the background. I'd curl up beside you or in your lap, and you'd stroke my fur absently while turning pages. "You're a good listener, Tucker," you'd say sometimes. "You never interrupt or try to solve my problems. You just let me talk." I didn't understand why anyone would do differently, but I was happy to provide whatever comfort you needed. You worried whenever I wanted to go outside, but you understood it was in my nature to explore. "Be careful out there, Mr. Independent," you'd say every time you opened the door for me. And I always came back, sometimes with a gift that would make you squeal, and then thank me with a mixture of disgust and amusement. "I appreciate the thought, Tucker," you'd say as you disposed of a mouse or small bird. "But maybe just bring me a pretty leaf next time." I never understood why you didn't appreciate these tokens of my hunting prowess, but I kept bringing them anyway, hoping eventually you'd see their value. The seasons changed and our routines shifted with them. Winter nights found us huddled by the fireplace, you with your crossword puzzles and me curled against your slippered feet. Spring meant open windows and the return of those delicious bird-watching opportunities. Summer had us both moving slower in the heat, sharing the cool spots beneath the ceiling fan. And fall, my favorite, brought crunchy leaves to chase and that wonderful smell of your pumpkin bread baking. I grew to know the neighborhood as well as I knew your house. There was Mrs. Fitzgerald next door with her yappy little dog that I loved to torment by sitting just on our side of the fence, calmly washing my paws while it worked itself into a frenzy. There was Mr. Abernathy across the street, who always stopped to chat with you when you worked in the front garden, his eyes lingering a bit too long on your face. "He's sweet on you," I heard Marianne tease during one of her rare visits, and you blushed like a young girl. "Don't be ridiculous," you said. "We're just neighbors." But you wore your nice blouse the next time you knew he'd be walking by. Do you remember the big snowstorm during our second winter together? The power went out for 3 days. You wrapped us both in blankets and told me stories about your childhood in Minnesota, where, according to you, this little dusting would hardly cause a school delay. We slept in the living room those nights, close to the fireplace, and I purred extra loud to help keep your spirits up when the darkness seemed too heavy. You taught me to play a game with a piece of string by flashlight, the shadows dancing on the walls as we laughed together in the cold. When Mr. Abernathy knocked on the door with his generator-powered hot plate and a thermos of soup, you invited him in, and the three of us spent the evening playing cards by candlelight. I watched from my blanket nest as he looked at you with warmth in his eyes, and I approved. Humans shouldn't be alone in the cold. I was with you for your 68th birthday, when Marianne finally visited with her husband and those twin boys who pulled my tail until you taught them how to pet me properly. I hid under the bed most of the visit but came out for cake. You slipped me a tiny bit of frosting when no one was looking and whispered, "Our secret, birthday buddy." It was worth the upset stomach that followed. I overheard Marianne asking if you were managing okay on your own, her tone suggesting she had doubts. You gestured to me and said, "I'm not alone. Tucker takes good care of me." She didn't seem to understand the truth of those words, but I did. We took care of each other. There was that awful week when you caught pneumonia, and the neighbor, Mrs. Fitzgerald, came to feed me while you were in the hospital. I slept on your bathrobe that you'd left on the bed, wondering if you'd come back. When you finally returned, thinner and moving slower than before, I didn't leave your side for days, as if my purring might help heal whatever was still hurting inside you. I watched you take pills from orange bottles, frowning at their number. I noticed how you held the banister tighter when climbing stairs, how you rested more frequently between tasks. Something had changed, but your smile when you looked at me hadn't. That summer, Mr. Abernathy began coming over regularly for coffee on the porch. I'd sit between you on the swing, accepting scratches from both of you, listening to your conversations about books and gardening and the town's history. Sometimes he'd bring his guitar, and you'd sing along softly to old folk songs. Once he took your hand while singing something about mountains and valleys, and you didn't pull away. I approved of this development. His voice made you smile in a way I hadn't seen before. Time moved differently for me than for you, Eleanor. I watched as your hair turned from salt and pepper to completely silver. Your hands developed more spots and became less steady. The doctor visits became more frequent, and new orange bottles appeared in your bathroom cabinet. You started taking afternoon naps with me. Something you used to tease was Tucker's laziness rubbing off on you. You began to forget small things, where you'd put your glasses, whether you'd taken your morning pills, sometimes even what day it was. But you never forgot my breakfast or to tell me good night when we settled into bed. I noticed when the stairs became harder for you to climb, how you'd pause halfway up to catch your breath. That's when you moved your bedroom to the old sewing room downstairs, and I helped supervise the nice men who brought the new bed. You apologized to me, as if I would mind the change. Silly human, wherever you were became my favorite place. The new arrangement had advantages anyway. Your new bedroom had a window that overlooked the bird feeder, providing me with premium entertainment without having to leave your side. Mr. Abernathy, Gerald, as you'd started calling him, came over one evening with a small box that made you gasp when you opened it. Inside was a silver necklace with a cat-shaped pendant. He fastened it around your neck, his hands lingering on your shoulders. "For the woman who taught me to love cats," he said, and you kissed his cheek. After that, he stayed for dinner more often, and sometimes didn't leave until morning. I adjusted my routine to include him, allowing him the right side of the bed, but insisting on maintaining my spot between your ankles. He accepted this arrangement with good humor, occasionally bribing me with bits of bacon at breakfast. The day came when another person started visiting regularly, Angela, the home health aide with the gentle hands and lilac-scented lotion. She was kind to both of us, though she didn't appreciate how I supervised her work from the top of the refrigerator. "That cat watches me like I'm taking a test," she told you, and you both laughed. She helped you bathe and dress, prepared meals that followed some new restrictive plan from your doctor, and kept track of your growing collection of medications. Gerald still came by every day, usually bringing flowers or a book to read to you. Your daughter started calling more often, and you'd put the phone on speaker so I could hear too. "Mom, Tucker doesn't care about my job promotion," Marianne would say, and you'd reply, "Don't be ridiculous. Tucker cares about everything that matters to us." You were right about that. The twins were teenagers now, their voices deeper when they occasionally said hello from the background. They'd long stopped asking when they could visit, and I saw the hurt in your eyes even as you maintained a cheerful tone. Gerald noticed too, and would hold your hand a little tighter on those days, distracting you with plans for the garden or a new recipe he wanted to try. I knew something was changing as the seasons turned again. You spent more days in bed, and visitors came wearing serious expressions. The house filled with more equipment, metal things that beeped and hissed. Through it all, they let me stay close to you, sometimes curled at your feet, sometimes nestled carefully against your side where it didn't hurt. Sometimes at night, when it was just the two of us, you'd whisper your fears to me in the darkness. "I'm not ready, Tucker," you'd say, stroking my fur. "There's still so much I want to do." I'd purr louder, trying to tell you that whatever happened, you wouldn't face it alone. Gerald moved in completely then, sleeping on the couch near your bed, always within earshot if you needed anything. Marianne finally came for a longer visit, bringing the twins who had grown taller than her. They stood awkwardly by your bed, these almost men who barely knew their grandmother. But they were gentle when they petted me, and one of them put flowers in a vase by your window without being asked. I liked them better then. They had your kind eyes, hidden beneath teenage indifference. Do you remember the last evening we spent on the porch swing? It was October, and the maple tree was showing off in bright oranges and reds. You were wrapped in that thick quilt your sister made, and you had Angela help you outside just to feel the autumn air. I sat in your lap, and your hand, thinner now but still so familiar, stroked my fur as we watched the sunset together. "And we've had a good run, haven't we, old friend?" you whispered. I purred my agreement as the stars began appearing. Gerald brought you hot tea, and the three of us stayed until the fireflies came out, blinking their secret messages in the gathering darkness. That night was when I felt the change coming. Not for you, not yet, but for me. There's something we cats understand about the world that humans don't. We sense things beyond your understanding, feel the pull of places you can't see. Some call it instinct, but it's more than that. It's knowing when one journey is ending and another beginning. The next morning, while Angela was busy in the kitchen and you were sleeping, I slipped out through the screen door that hadn't latched properly. I paused at the edge of your garden, looking back at the house that had been our home. Part of me wanted to stay, to be there until your last moment. But that's not how it works for us, Eleanor. Cats like me, we don't typically stay to watch our people leave this world. Instead, we go ahead, preparing the way. By then, I was an old cat myself. 12 years had passed since that rainy day when you found me. My joints ached in the morning, and I couldn't jump to the windowsill without stopping to calculate the distance first. My once bright orange fur had dulled, with white hairs spreading across my face like frost. We had grown old together, you and I, sharing the indignities of aging with as much grace as we could muster. You never complained when I missed the litter box occasionally, and I never minded when you sometimes called me by Harold's name in moments of confusion. I spent my last days in the woods behind Millbrook Community Park, watching the birds and feeling the sun on my aging bones. I thought about you constantly, wondering if you were looking for me, hoping Angela was remembering to check your blood pressure at the right times, wishing I could tell you not to worry. I imagined Gerald comforting you, perhaps distracting you with stories about the Millbrook Historical Society or plans for next spring's garden that you both knew you wouldn't see. I pictured Marianne finally understanding what you needed from her. Not solutions or arrangements, but simply presence, the comfort of a hand holding yours in silence. As my own breaths grew shallow and the world began to fade around me, I wasn't afraid. I'd lived a good life, first as a scared stray and then as your beloved Tucker. I fell asleep beneath an old oak tree, with the afternoon sun warming my fur, dreaming of your gentle hands and the sound of your voice calling me for dinner. Here's what I need you to know, Eleanor. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because it was time and because somehow I knew you would follow soon. That's what we cats do, we scout ahead. Right now, as you read this letter, which yes, I've somehow managed to have delivered through means best left unexplained, know that I'm waiting in that next place. It's nice here. Warm sunshine, cool grass, and endless windowsills. There's a man here who reminds me of the one in your photographs. He says he's been waiting for both of us for quite some time. He scratches behind my ears just right and calls me Eleanor's cat, with a smile that reminds me of yours. You wouldn't believe how young I feel here, how easily I can run and jump again, how the pain that had become such a constant companion has vanished completely. My fur is bright orange again, my eyes clear and sharp. I spend my days exploring meadows that never end and napping in sunbeams that never fade, and always watching for you. I've made friends, other cats with stories like mine, dogs who surprisingly aren't terrible company, even a few birds who no longer fear my approach, but none of them are you. Sometimes I catch myself turning at a sound, thinking I've heard your voice calling my name. Not yet, but soon. I can feel it in that same place inside that told me it was time to leave. Don't be sad that our time together ended. Be grateful, as I am, that it happened at all. Out of all the yards I could have wandered into, all the people who might have found me, somehow I found you, the human whose heart beat in rhythm with my purrs. Do you believe in fate, Eleanor? I never gave it much thought until I met you. But looking back, it seems impossible that our meeting was mere chance. Perhaps Harold sent me to you. Perhaps the universe simply knew we needed each other. When I think about our years together, I don't dwell on the end, the slow decline, the pain, the struggles. Instead, I remember the thousands of ordinary moments that made up our extraordinary connection. The way you'd absent-mindedly stroke my head while reading, not even looking up from your book, but somehow finding exactly the right spot. The sound of your laugh when I'd chase my tail like a kitten, even in my older years. The gentle way you'd wipe the corner of my eye when it got crusty, never making me feel embarrassed about my aging body's betrayals. I remember how you saved the warm spot in the middle of the bed for me on cold nights, how you'd talk to me from other rooms, calling out, "You won't believe what Gerald just said, Tucker," as if I couldn't bear to miss a moment of gossip. how you defended my dignity when the veterinarian called me chunky during my middle-aged years. He's not fat, you insisted. He's majestic. I loved you even more for that. I remember the day you set up my aging cat accommodations, the little carpeted steps to help me reach the windowsill, the extra soft bed with raised edges to support my old bones, the shallower food dish that didn't strain my neck. You noticed every change in me, adapted to every need, all without making me feel like a burden. In return, I tried to do the same for you, sleeping closer when your arthritis flared, purring louder when your spirits seemed low, staying steady as your world changed around you. When your time comes to join me, no rush, but don't keep me waiting too long. Listen for a familiar meow. Look for an orange tabby with one white paw and a slightly crooked tail. I'll be there, Eleanor, ready to show you around, just as you once welcomed me into your home. Gerald will understand. He's a good man who loves you, but he knows about our special bond. He'll help you cross that final threshold with the same tenderness he's shown throughout your time together, and then he'll let you go, knowing you're not going alone. Until then, remember me when the spring azaleas bloom, when the afternoon sun creates the perfect napping spot on the windowsill, and whenever you hear the distant sound of a cat's purr. Some bonds don't break, not even when we leave our physical forms behind. They just stretch across whatever distance separates us, holding fast, guiding us home to each other. When you feel a sudden warmth beside you on a cold night, or catch a glimpse of orange from the corner of your eye, or dream of gentle paws kneading your chest, that's me, checking in, keeping watch, loving you still. I'm never truly gone as long as you remember the comfort of my purr against your chest, the weight of my paws on your lap, the trust we built between a woman with a kind heart and a cat who needed exactly that kindness to heal. Every cat knows that death is just another doorway, one we're particularly good at slipping through when the time is right. And on the other side, we wait for our favorite humans, ready to guide them into whatever comes next. So when your time comes, don't be afraid. I'll be sitting right at that threshold, tail twitching impatiently as always, ready for our next adventure together. With eternal gratitude and love, your faithful companion, Tucker P.S. The catnip mouse under the refrigerator. I put it there on purpose. Some mysteries should remain unsolved. And I never really hated that Christmas sweater with the bells you made me wear for photos. I just thought you should work a little harder for those holiday card pictures. Your delight was worth my temporary dignity. P.P.S. Tell Gerald to keep putting out food for the strays behind the garden shed. There's a little calico who reminds me of myself, scared but hoping for kindness. She could use a friend like you.